infallible by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Today is April 29th. This is the last day, by the way, to sign up for the drawing for the Be Strong blood flow restriction system. It's a $430 system that we're giving away tomorrow on the air. If you're a friend of mine on Facebook, go to the Superhuman Radio Network page or my personal Facebook page and click the link and get your name in there. Because some lucky winner is going to be announced tomorrow on the live show. And tune in tomorrow. You may hear your name. Who knows? Before we get started with an epic show, I predict, a returning guest, a guy I have a lot of respect for, and I've known him for a long time, actually. Before he was a doctor, before he had his PhD. He's smiling. But anyway, I got to give a shout out to our title sponsor, and that's Legendary Foods. Right now, we have a special deal with them that if you go to eatlegendary.com and use the code SHR10, you'll get 10% off of everything, including their tasty pastry, which is an upgraded Pop-Tart with less than 1 gram of sugar and all of the delightful deliciousness and decadence of eating crap food. And with 9 grams of protein, you can't go wrong. But they also have, and you shouldn't ignore these, they have the best seasoned almonds and the best nut butters in the world, bar none. And I say that with complete humility and honesty because I have eliminated sugar from my diet, and sometimes I just want something sweet, and I'll just get a tablespoon of one of their nut butters, and I'm very, very satisfied with that. And I am not a fan of almonds. I realized that this morning. This morning I was eating a couple handfuls of the pizza-flavored almonds, and I thought to myself, man, these are so good. And I thought, you know, I never really gravitated to eating almonds until I started eating the Legendary almonds because they're so fresh, and the spices that they add to them make them so delicious. So you can check those out, show them some love. They really do help make this show possible. And now we'll bring my guest on here. There we go. Turn his volume up. None other than Dr. Bret Contreas. He doesn't go around letting people call him doctor, but I thought I'd give him a hard time today. How you doing, Bret?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
So I got to tell this story. So first of all, I'm wearing my Arizona State University hat, which I had to find. I couldn't even find it in honor of Bret because this is his old alma mater when he was in Arizona. And when I lived in Arizona going through my divorce, I heard about this guy. My niece was the vice president of an advertising agency called Mart's Agency. And the girl who owned the agency, she had this thing called the burner. And it was a little platform that you got on, and it looked like a tricep type movement, but it really wasn't. It was a glute thrust. And she says, oh, yeah, this guy, Bret Contreas, created this, and we're in partners with him. We're going to start marketing it. And I thought, this is brilliant. No one, I mean, sure, wrestlers did neck bridges and stuff like that, but that was for your neck. Nobody really ever started talking about focusing on the glutes as a primary mover in a movement before you. I'm going back to 2008 now, 2007 actually, that you developed that product, right?
Yep.
And lo and behold, all these years later, you have become the glute guy. And I talked about this in the write-up for today's show. Around 1991, J-Lo came on the scene, and she was a different actress, not just because of her ethnicity, but she had this proud, round butt. And all of a sudden, it gave women who had big round asses the right to have them and made them popular. But then the girls who didn't have them wanted them all of a sudden. And before you, really, I have to say this, and maybe you're going to say, well, no, there was another guy that I learned from. But before you, women who had flat butts, really short of surgery, they had no options. And then you come out and start focusing on certain movements, targeted movements. And all of a sudden, every girl who wants it, who wants to put in the work, can have a beautiful, I call it an anti-gravity ass.
I mean, I don't think there were any like pure glute specialists, So I think I was like the OG of, the glute experts. And it's funny because now there's like, probably 50 of them on Instagram. And
Yeah.
it's funny. I started it off, but yeah, it was 2006 when I thought it up. And, Carl, I thought it up watching UFC fights. I was like, man, buck him off of you. How come you're not even trying to bridge up? And maybe if you had stronger glutes and more explosive glutes, you'd throw your hips up and get the guy off of you. So I thought, how could you load that? How could you add range of motion to it, make it a better exercise? And that's how I thought up the hip thrust.
You know, it's really funny. So you've gained a lot of your popularity because of the aesthetic effects of your work. But the reality is, and I've said this to people at my gym in the past, my squat and my deadlift improved once I started to do hip thrusts. So for those of us guys out there who are interested in getting stronger in these types of movements, really, you were the first person to come out and say, I mean, I know you've worked with NFL football players who they increase their explosive launch into a sprint because of the work that they're doing. And, there's always been this thing, well, if you want to squat, if you want to learn to be strong in the squat, you got to squat more. And so people will discount the value of a hip thrust. But if you want to learn how to get out of the hole with big weight on your back, start to hip thrust. That's what I figured out.
It's funny. And these linemen, they weighed 350 pounds. They would do, I wouldn't even have to add much load because they're sinking their hips. I would actually elevate their back and their feet, and they'd sink down, thrust up, and they'd get this crazy glute pump, and they'd go, wow, I really like that. It's nice to not feel like I have to put hundreds of pounds on my back and wear a belt and put knee wraps on just to work my glutes. They really liked it back in the day when I trained more athletes. Now I train mostly bikini competitors, but I kind of miss.
It's a tough life. Somebody's got to do it, right? Now, didn't you get married not too long ago?
No, never got married. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're still single.
Still single.
So when you're out and about, do women ever ask you, they ever say to you, my God, because of you, I've got this great butt. Will you sign my ass?
I've been asked that one time, but
that's
funny
classic
about, Instagram because, I came from being a high school math teacher in Scottsdale, and, you come from a math teacher. I was making like 30 grand a year back in the day, and then slowly working up as a personal trainer. But now being on Instagram and having, I'm almost at 1 million followers. It's like people start treating you like you're some celebrity. And like last time I was in LA for the LA Fit Expo, I come out of this restaurant Yard House, and some girl was like, oh my God, you're Bret Contreas. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, oh my God, can I get a picture? And she's like, hands her phone to my friend Paul, and she's shaking so bad. Her hand is just shaking. And I take a picture of her. I'm like, are you going to be okay? And I give her a hug. She's like convulsing. And I'm like, I'm just a normal guy. Trust me. And she's like, no, you're not. You're a god. And I'm like, what? It's so funny that, I've always, I don't ever want to get some crazy ego. What if Instagram went down tomorrow? I'd be back on the drawing board. So I don't want to get an ego about it.
But you don't have that personality either. There are certain people who quietly they aspire to be famous. And I don't think you're all about the work. You're not about the fame at all.
Yeah, and especially starting out, it was just, I'd have all these guys in the industry that would say, God, Bret, you're going about it all wrong. Why are you giving away all your information for free? And you could make so much money if you did this. And I'm like, they're telling me what to do, and I'm going like this in terms of popularity and spreading the word. And my methods are now all over the world. That was what I was after. I just wanted the hip thrust and all the other things that I do to become popular. And the money didn't come until probably 7 years in, 8 years in, I started making really good money. But I never cared about that, And now, it's funny, Carl, like when I came here, this is my gym, this is my gym glute lab.
Right.
And when I started here, I just, I make money online, and if there was nothing online, I'd be poor because in real life, I have a hard time charging people, and I just started training everyone here for free, and, giving them equipment and stuff, giving them free glute loops and free everything. And I just did that to be nice, but I actually think it was an awesome strategy because I never thought about this. They're tagging me all the time, and then I share it, and we build each other up, you know. And it was kind of a unique, cool thing. My glute squad and the people that I work with here, I've actually never charged any of them. I just train them for free, just because when I know their situation, I'm like, man, it's expensive out here in San Diego. I want them to have some user extra money for them, and it ended up being good for both of us, you know, because some of these girls, you know, they'll have like 30 to 70,000 followers, and they tag me, but it also just gives social proof, like
it works.
Yeah.
So you're an extremely humble guy, and you've always been that way. And I get it. Because I've known who you are for a long time, and you've been coming on the show for at least a decade now.
Yeah.
Who had the biggest influence on that part of your personality, as far as your parents or your family?
I don't think it was. I think it was just. I don't think it was a person I modeled it after. It was my just being such a skinny kid. I had no self-esteem, and I remember like in 7th grade, we all started lifting weights like in my friend's backyard, and you know they'd have the barbell and then like a 10-pound on each side, and they'd be doing sets of 10. And I remember unracking the bar, just the bar, and I came down and I was pinned. I couldn't lift it, and they were like, "No, you got to do this. You got to do this." I tried like 5 different times, and they were like, "Wow, I can't believe you're that weak." And I was so skinny, so weak. My grandma would always put her hand around my arm and it would touch, and she'd just shake her head at me. So I never thought I'd be anything. Like the fact that I'm just look like I even lift now, I'm you know, like I never thought I'd become some great
so you're
athlete.
always that. And I understand what you're saying, because I was a very fat kid. And so I got humiliated for being fat.
Yeah.
But you never lose that person. Even when you grow up and you become someone different, you still see life through those eyes, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really touching. So you've released a new book. How many books have you written now?
3.
Okay, so you released a new book here, and it's called the Glute Lab. I'm sorry, it's called Glute Lab. It's the art and science of strength and physique training. I'm sorry. I see you have the effect on me too. I'm shaking and I can't even get my words out. What's different about this book than other books that you've done before?
Well, Bodyweight Strength Training Anatomy I wrote, that was just a bodyweight book, and then Strong Curves was a book on glute training for women. But this what I loved about Glute Lab is my like I waited around. It's funny because I don't need to be like, I don't pitch book deals to people. I don't reach out to people. I just do my own thing in life, and I'm trying to manage Instagram and put out content and train myself and train people and read research, and that keeps me busy enough. So I'm in no hurry to I'm not pitching book deals to companies. They came to me and I said, okay, I would love to write a book, but I want Glenn Cordoza to co-author it with me, because he just crushed it with Supple Leopard. You know, that book with Kelly Starrett. He killed it.
Oh yeah, I think I had Kelly on the show. I didn't have him, but yeah, I did a show about that when they first that book came out. What, like 9 years ago, right? 8 years ago?
I'm not sure. Like 6, yeah, I mean, it was probably They killed it, and Glenn did a good job. So I'm like, okay, I want Glenn to be my co-author. And Glenn calls me up. He's like, Bret, I'm so busy. My wife's gonna kill me if I jump right in another book. Can you find someone else? And I said, no, I'll wait. And he's like, it could be a couple of years. And I'm like, I'll wait. That'll be fine. I'll just gain more expertise, you know, during that time. And he's like, okay, I'll give you a call when I'm ready. And about a year later, he calls me up and he's like, okay, I'm ready. Let's do this. And we took 2 years on this book. We spent 2 years writing this book. I mean, and what I love about it is, you know, the owner of the company, his name's Arish. He just kind of like, you know, I know he's going, because Glenn and I are both kind of like OCD. We want it to be so comprehensive, and they're going, God, it's like when we submitted, it was like 750 pages. They're like, we can't sell a 700. We have to condense it to 606 pages. We had to condense it to, so it was so hard for us to like reformat it and condense it down, but we ended up.
What do you get rid of, right? Because you realize everything in here is important. Right. So how do we sacrifice something?
well, that was so hard. It's like cutting off a finger or something. You're like, oh, this is so important. But this book, I mean, you go look at the ratings, and there's like 1,000, around 1,000 ratings right now, and almost all of them are 5-star because I mean, I feel like it's the best. I mean, I have all the books in strength and conditioning. I think it's the best that anyone's. I mean, not trying to brag, but we put more time and energy in it than anyone, and I think it comes across well. But we got to tackle I delved into nutrition. I delved into like training around pain and injury, program design, exercise technique. It's very comprehensive.
So I was thinking about this interview in anticipation of it. I was thinking to myself, I in 2016, I crushed my left foot, and I lived with the crushed foot. I continued to train, I continued to squat, I continued to do everything. But then in 2018, I underwent 2 foot surgeries in that year. And so just about all of my lower body strength just disappeared. And the thing that I lost first was my glutes. And once my glutes, I'm like you. I have that disease, no ass at all, And so I always had that flat ass when I was a young man. But when I started to lift heavy, I just developed a really great butt. And and it contributed a lot to many, many things that I was able to do, sprint and so on. Well, I lost my glutes, and now I'm noticing that my gait has changed. My hips are changing the way they work. I'm starting to get a knee problem in my left knee. My ankles aren't. And I realized at that moment that the glutes contribute so much more than we give credit to, because they really are. I mean, unless you're doing seated leg extensions, anything else, your quads and hamstrings depend on your glutes to be the foundation for them to drive and push. And so, and the spinal erectors, they're just hanging in the wind if it's not for the glutes stabilizing them. The glutes could be, I would say, very underestimated in their contribution to overall physical strength. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, like the pendulum will swing, and like in the 70s, and like growing up learning about bodybuilding, Carl, did you ever hear anyone talk about glutes? Like it was great?
No.
You had legs
other than them being striated when you lost enough body fat and water. Yeah. That's it.
You need to be conditioned, but no, about glute training, it was just, this is what you do for quads, this is what you do for hams. And your glutes just kind of developed because you trained quads and hams. And some people got nice glutes that way, but not everyone. They never targeted. And it's funny because you look and they did shrugs for their traps, and they did all 3 delt raises, and they did curls and tricep extensions and flies.
They trained their necks. You're right, but no one trained their glutes.
They trained calves. They'd even train forearms, but they'd never train glutes. And it was like the one muscle that you couldn't isolate, and then a lot of that was like, no one cared that much, but Vince Gironda, he was like the glutes shouldn't be very big, the quad should be huge, and you don't want to do too many squats to get the glutes big. You want to do duck squats or like a narrow stance, or like sissy squats and hack
squats, right?
Hack squats with the duck stance and stuff, and then times changed, and then I helped. You mentioned like the J-Lo, the Kim Kardashian, all this kind of new era coming in, and then that coincided with me coming out with like, hey, look, you can do it if you want. Here's your tools. Here's all the exercises. But does the pendulum swing too far eventually? I don't know. Sometimes people can think glutes are like, there are other, from a functional standpoint, other muscles are important too. They're all important. But I do think glutes, if I had to, knowing what I know about human anatomy and physiology and biomechanics, if I had to say what is the most important muscle in the body, I would say glutes, because if you think of like a muscular anatomy chart, the glutes are kind of right there, the centerpiece, the keystone, but they're involved in so many different things, like the mere fact that they're involved in not just hip extension, but hip external rotation and hip abduction. Think about when you swing a bat. I always do this at conferences. I'll show.
Right.
When I'm back here, I'm in hip flexion, hip adduction, and hip internal rotation. And I do this, and I use all 3 actions of the glutes. I end up in hip extension, hip abduction, hip external rotation. So you use all three of the glutes in that one movement. But they also, a lot of people don't know this, that 70 to 85% of the attachments are to fascia. So only about 15 to 30% attached to like the gluteal tuberosity, on the femur.
Right.
Most of the attachments are to fascia. So it influences a lot through myofascial force transmission. So it connects to the IT band, and the IT band connects to the tibia. So you can almost think of it as a tendon down to the lower leg. It attaches to the SI joint, to the erector and stuff, and it transfers kind of through the thoracolumbar fascia up to the lat. So I think it influences a lot of movement throughout the body.
So a lot of people suffer from, everybody I talk to who has lower back problems. It's, it's L4, L5, S1. And we sit on our ass all day long. And the movements we do perform, as a rule, have very little glute activation in them. Could hip thrusts actually benefit a guy who's trying to increase, let's say, the space between vertebrae and loosen up those vertebrae in that region of the lumbar spine? Do you think that motion is good for the lumbar spine?
So I do think it's good for the lumbar spine. I don't think it increases the distance. In this pain science world, there's a lot of this pendulum swinging too, where everyone, all they knew about was biomechanics. And I was like that 10 years ago. If you had back pain, I'm like, you have a weak core and you have weak glutes. You need to strengthen you need to be doing your glute activation every day. You need to do some planks and side planks and stuff like that. And then we realized there's much more to it, pain and there's much more to pain than just biomechanics. There's a lot more factors. Then the biopsychosocial model became popular, and especially with chronic pain, it's like it has a lot to do with your psychology and sociology. But interestingly, all the pain people would say, well, there's so many nocebo and placebo and nocebo effects out there. For example, if you're told like glutes are really important for back pain, and then you don't have big glutes, and then I'm your trainer, and I'm like, man, does your back hurt? Because you don't have any glutes. You could theoretically manifest back pain just believing it.
Yeah.
So when people start saying like, I started doing hip thrusts and my back feels better, a lot of the pain scientists just assume, because they don't have a lot of experience as trainers, they just think, oh, it's probably placebo effect or something. But there's way too many anecdotes. I mean, if I put it on my Instagram and said, how many of you start feeling better when you start doing hip thrusts and some band work, like some abduction exercises, I would have so many, just thousands of people commenting saying, I know for a fact I did. So there has to be something to it. As to the mechanism, does stronger glutes spare other structures? Because now you're using your glutes more, you use these other structures less. You move more at the hips and less at the spine. When you deadlift, when you squat, when you pick things off the ground, when you do things, you might tense your glutes more or just move at the hips more instead of rounding back. We don't really know the mechanism, but it could, it could theoretically create less, create like better movement patterns, which create less damage. But the pain science community is trying to get away from this whole damage talk, because you can MRI people and, say I took 100 people who had no back pain or no knee pain or no shoulder pain or no hip pain, and I MRI'd them, imaged them, you'd find around 30% of people who have a lot of damage.
But no pain.
No pain. Like herniated discs, for example. And it depends on the age. Like it goes up as you age.
Right.
But say 30% of people would have no back pain, even though they had herniated discs. And you're like, how do they not have pain? It's kind of crazy.
I seem to recall, I've been doing the show for 14 years, literally 4 to 5 days a week. But I remember having Stuart McGill on the show when he wrote the book, Fix Your Own Back. And I could have sworn I asked him about hip thrusts and he was working with you. Was he not? Didn't you guys get together on something?
Yeah, I flew out to meet him and we did some stuff at his lab. And yeah, it was interesting to see, because I read this research, it was cool to see this is where it gets done. You know, here's this model of the spine and how they load it up, and they take these, you know, models like interestingly, they use the pig spine, the porcine cervical spine is very similar to the human lumbar spine, the size of the discs and how they're always cantilevering to get food and stuff. And so they use that because it's very biomechanically similar and for a lot of research. But anyway, you can take a jig and compress it, because when you do like a crunch, for example, or pick something up off the ground, the erectors, the abs, when they contract, it squeezes, it creates compressive force on the disc. So they'll put, you know, around like say 2,800 newtons of compressive force or something like that on the discs, and they move it. They move it back and forth through a range of motion thought to be similar to that when you pick something up off the ground. They'll do it for, you know, say 10,000 cycles and see how many of the discs herniate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, he was. I remember him talking, and he was favoring the hip thrust. He thought that if it was done properly, I remember him talking about like some people when they, and you do a lot of stuff on this in some of your videos. I've seen you correct people when they're overextending the lumbar spine, when they're actually like humping the bar instead of hinging the bar, so to speak.
Yeah, it's funny. He's always been a fan of the hip thrust, but he cautions people not to. It's like when I start telling people to posterior pelvic tilt. When you posterior pelvic tilt, the lumbar spine moves a little bit into flexion. Just like when you anterior tilt, your lumbar spine moves into extension a little bit. So I started realizing that if I had people, well, it's funny. This is the things you learn because like Stu's a good example of a pure researcher. Like he studies things in a lab, and then me, I'm way more of a personal trainer, coach. But I was talking to my good friend Ben Bruno one day. He trains celebrities out in Hollywood and athletes and stuff like that. But he's like, Bret, I just tell people to look at like where the ceiling meets the wall in front of them, and then they don't hyperextend. They end up not hyperextending. And I was like, man, just yesterday I was looking for pictures for a blog post I was writing. This was several years back, and I was looking for pictures, and I was trying to find. I was looking at videos of all my clients, and I'm like, man, I can't use any of these because they're like looking forward and cranked down, and I'm like, maybe that's actually a good thing. So I started actually cueing it more. So then it moved to like, don't look up, look forward, and move mostly from the sternum down, and that way they don't hyperextend their spines. They end up posterior tilting at the lockout, and then no one hurts themselves when you do it that way. But the way people hurt themselves with hip thrust is their chest comes up too much and they hyperextend, and that can lead to damage. But it's funny because Stu also cautions don't posterior pelvic tilt too much, but that doesn't happen with the hip thrust too much. But he's always thinking of the spine, and I'm kind of just thinking of what works in theory more. Like hey, in the last decade, I've never had anyone hurt themselves with hip thrust. You know,
right. In fact, I have lumbar spine issues from decades of squatting, and I had an orthopedic surgeon who's a good friend of mine. When I tore a couple hamstring attachments, probably about 5 or 6, maybe 6 years ago, and he got the pictures of me, and he said, "Man, you're going to have back problems someday." And sure enough, it did. But in the morning when I wake up, I bring my heels up, and I do like 5 or 6 thrusts in the bed. And I get out of bed and I have no pain. If I don't do those thrusts, I get out of bed and I got to walk for a while before the pain goes away.
Yeah.
So there's something to it, and it could be dynamic flexion, dynamic movement, just loosening things up a little bit more than anything else. I want to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the book. We're talking today with Bret Contreas about his new book, Glute Lab, and you can get it at Amazon. Or wherever finer books are sold. But also, you can also go to Bret's website, which is bretcontreras.com. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. I love beef, and if you love beef, listen up. I've discovered the best tasting beef in the world, and that's not an exaggeration, at Piedmontese.com. The Piedmontese breed is famous from Italy for being lean and unbelievably tender with half the fat and calories of traditional beef. Even typically tough cuts are tender when it comes from the Piedmontese cows. And for the first time ever, Piedmontese cows are being raised here in the USA. Get 2 free 10-ounce New York strips when you purchase $50 or more at Piedmontese.com with code SHR. Go to Piedmontese.com and use code SHR today. You will never eat any other type of beef ever again. How often do you sit with your laptop right on your lap? How much time do you spend on your cell phone? Are you in a technology-packed office Monday through Friday? Are you worried about this type of radiation? Now there's something you can do about it. GetLambs.com. This radiation has been linked to infertility in men, glandular tumors, gut microbiome dysbioses, and impaired sleep quality. Now you can provide 360-degree protection to at-risk parts of your body with radiation-proof apparel from GetLambs.com. Comfortable, breathable, and 99% effective. Go to GetLambs.com and use coupon code SHR for 20% off your order of $100 or more. That's GetLambs.com, GetLambs.com, and code SHR.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at Synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it. Men and women, you've heard about hormone optimization. Do you feel like it's something you want to look into? RenewLifeRx.com is the place to start. Their doctors can help you with the solutions. RenewLifeRx.com has a simple process for lab work, consultation, and taking a deep dive into where your hormone levels can be improved. Superhuman Radio listeners get 30% off your initial lab work and consultation. Go to RenewLifeRx.com to schedule your no-obligation phone consultation today. Feel younger, get in better shape, and be more productive at RenewLifeRx.com.
Hey, this is Carl. For 14 years, you've heard me talk about Can-C eye drops, and they being the reason that I do not need reading glasses at now 61 years old. But I regularly get emails and messages from people who've been using Can-C and having some amazing results. Recently, I got an email from a fellow named Chad, who, because he was on dexamethasone eye drops for over 6 months, developed a cataract. Can-C eye drops actually reduced my cataract to the point where even my doctor has a hard time finding it. I will never stop using Can-C eye drops twice a day. I've been using them since 2008, he says. And you should be too. There is no better way to keep your eyes healthy and seeing clearly than Can-C eye drops. Go to wisechoicemedicine.com today and get on board, and we will both be looking into the future with very clear vision. You've heard me talk about the chill pill on the show and how effective it is at helping people who suffer from social anxiety, or sometimes when you just want to take the edge off to a long, stressful day. Well, listen to this story from Dylan Goutreau.
Definitely takes anxiety away, which I have a long history of having. Started out at 2 milligrams a day of Xanax. That was at 8 years old. And so I stopped using benzos 3 years ago. Extremely difficult. Yeah, so I spent about 3 years trying to find anything and everything I could that would be healthy for me to help with anxiety. Because I'm talking, full out panic attack. The chill pill was the first thing that I found that actually, in the middle of a panic attack, I can take, and it definitely subsides.
Go to drseeds.com. That's DRSEEDS.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your first bottle of the chill pill. Check it out. I promise this is one supplement that delivers.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
Welcome back. We're in day 43 of the lockdown here in Kentucky. And later in the show, I'm going to be talking about COVID-19 and age stratification to further continue the discussion about how we've handled pandemics in the past, how we're handling this one. We're talking right now with Bret Contreas about his new book, Glute Lab. You can get it at Amazon, or you can get it at his website, bretcontreras.com. So, there are certain muscles that I guess you and I have both learned, from being in the gym enough, that you can hit frequently. Forearms and calves, you can hit them every single day because these are muscles that are used to high repetitions just because of normal life. We're grabbing things, we're walking, and so on. And I don't know if this has to do with the ratios of fast twitch and slow twitch fibers, but is there anything to that with the glutes? I see a lot of the women hitting their glutes almost daily. Are they one of those muscle groups that they can just take it and you don't have to worry about it?
So that's a very good question, and I've got a lot of science I'm going to throw at you here. But interestingly, the glutes are not fast twitch like a lot of people think. They think, well, it's an explosive muscle group, but there's only 2 studies done on the topic, and these are older studies, like done in like the 70s. And one group showed like 52% slow twitch, and another showed like 67% slow twitch. So it's not a very fast twitch, as fast twitch as people think. But regardless, Brad and I just yesterday got this study published. Brad Schoenfeld.
Yeah, Dr. Bret Contreas, he's been on the show numerous times too.
Yeah, he and I just got a new study published out of Brad's lab in New York, and basically they looked at the soleus versus the gastrocnemius, and they did, high reps versus low reps, and just in theory, the gastrocnemius is more equal, more similar, like fast and slow twitch, but the soleus is very slow twitch, 80% of the fibers, and they trained it with high reps versus low reps, and it didn't result in differential different muscle gain like the theory states. So that was the first study to really examine that, and it kind of didn't show the evidence we thought it might. So that's remained to be seen. There needs to be more studies on it, but it casts some doubt on that whole theory. Now, as to what you said, though, in practice, we realize some muscles can be trained more frequently, and a lot of these women are training glutes all the time. But if you really think about it, think about the exercise that make you really sore, like flies, really stretch the pecs, Romanian deadlifts where you're really stretching the hamstrings, and lunges because you go real deep and stretch the glutes. So these exercises are really hard on the way down. You got to lower kind of slowly. You can't just dive bomb it. So you have a more pronounced eccentric phase, and then you stretch the muscle under long lengths, and it's like a contraction. It's trying to pull this way. But you're lengthening it as it's contracting. So that creates the most damage. Well, think about when you do band work or hip thrust. The hip thrust is you're down at the bottom of the hip thrust. You start moving up. It's kind of easy at the bottom. The other part is at the top when the glutes are at their shortest muscle length. You don't create a lot of damage doing hip thrusts and glute bridges. When you do band work, you're standing. You're not in a stretch. You move to the side. You move the leg laterally. The only hard part is kind of as you move your leg laterally, and it's in a shortened position. So there's not a lot of muscle damage, so you don't have to repair that muscle damage. It's like if here's your baseline and you damage the muscle, then you've got to repair until it can grow bigger. And so you don't have the muscle damage. So that we need more research for, but that's my theory as to why you see, because they're not doing lunges and deadlifts 7 days a week,
No.
If they did, I don't think they'd see good results.
And what does that say about training methodology in the first place? I'm going to be 62 in a couple months. And a couple years ago, I started experimenting with hitting every body part every day for 5 days, but not taking them to complete exhaustion. So at the end of a week, maybe I ended up doing 100 reps in a certain movement, but I did it in small aliquots where I wasn't trashing my central nervous system. I wasn't trashing the muscle, and I was able to do the work. And I saw great gains from that, which made me start thinking, we bodybuilding has given us lots of great things, but it's also given us lots of errors too. And this whole idea of taking muscles to failure, whether it's concentric or eccentric, this whole idea of taking muscles to failure may actually be misguided. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. If you look at the whole body, and it's funny because this is where I just love being a scientific trainer, like a guy who reads science, because the theory is as you go closer and closer to failure, like you start off a set of 10 or a set of 15, muscle activation isn't that high, rep 1, rep 2, and then it climbs a little bit as you move towards failure because you get greater activation of, you recruit more motor units as you start fatiguing. So it's like it's getting hard, it's getting harder, and then, oh my God, I can barely get another rep, and you're eking it out and squeezing it out. Well, that rep is going to be, that last rep theoretically induces a much greater hypertrophic stimulus because of two reasons. Number one, you have greater activation, so theoretically like more tension on the muscles, but also the time component. Like you could say you just hopped off of a tall bench and landed 10 times in a row. Your muscle activation in the quads would be through the roof, but it's such a rapid contraction that you don't have the time availability to create sufficient tension because cross bridges take time to develop. If you have really rapid, that's why plyometrics and sprints don't build muscle as well as actual resistance training done properly. So that last rep, studies show that actually the last rep of a set to failure is the same time as a 1 rep max. Like you do a 1 rep max bench press or the 10th rep of a set of 10 to failure, that last rep is the same speed or very similar at least. So theoretically, in theory, going to failure is beneficial. In practice, you look at the whole body of research and you clearly have to go close to failure. Like you can't just do a set of 10 with a weight you can do 20 times. It's got to be hard, but you clearly, based on the literature, the whole body of literature, you don't need to be training to failure. For strength, and in some studies, it can be counterproductive. And then, we don't have enough research on what it does to you hormonally too, because it affects that. So if you train, what I think is, you can compensate by doing, if you don't train as hard, you can do an extra set or something, and it makes up for that. But like bottom line, and there's studies. A study was just published last week on this. They looked at rep speed, and like at how close to failure you have to train based on the last rep, the speed of the last rep, and it was. You do have to come close to failure, but not to failure. But I agree. I think it can be overdone. And I think, Carl, we grew up in the bodybuilding era. Do you remember every bodybuilder being like, I take every single set to complete muscular failure? And I'm going,
every day.
Every day. Yeah. Right. And I remember going, I don't know if I believe them because, like, I do a set to, like, if I do my first set of squats to failure or even chin-ups, if I do a set of chin-ups for as many reps as I can, the first set, I might get 12 reps. The most I've ever done is 16, but 12 reps. Already the second set, if I rest like 2 minutes, I'm already getting like 8. And then the third set, I get like 5. But you'll look at their workouts and it'll be like 10, 10, 10. So if you're really going to failure, you go down. You don't keep getting the same. So
yeah. No, I know. It's funny. And also, you have governors built into your brain that are designed to protect the heart. The brain is designed to keep you from giving yourself a heart attack, and people don't realize you can't derail that, because what it does is it starts to shut down intonation into the muscle. That's why when they put that magnetic halo on your head in those labs where they do muscle work, where they say take this leg press to failure, and you take it to failure, and then they go, could you do one more rep? And you're like struggling. You go, no. And then they put that magnet on your head, and you go, bump. You know what I'm talking about? That magnet, that pulse magnet.
No, but I wonder if you're talking about transcranial magnetic stimulation or whatever.
Well, they have this device in some of these labs where they test. This is where that whole, the granny who picked up the Volkswagen to save her grandson kind of theory comes from. So there's governors in the brain that are designed to keep you from shearing muscles off of bone or giving yourself a heart attack. And they're very effective in shutting down muscle activation. but they have a way to block that with a magnetic device. It looks like a halo. I saw a video about a study where they used it in the leg extension. They had a guy do leg extensions to failure. He couldn't do another rep. He brought the bar down. They said, try to do another rep, and he couldn't get it going. And while he was doing that, they put this little halo device, and his leg came right up. And they said, what we're doing is we're derailing the protective mechanisms in your brain that are designed to keep you from injuring yourself. And so that I mean, people say, oh, yeah, I take it to failure. Your muscles may have a lot more gas in them, but your brain is telling you you're done, you know?
Well, I've always been skeptical of that line of reasoning because you look at like voluntary activation, how hard someone can activate a muscle, and even beginners are at like 90%, you know, advanced are more like 100, closer to 100. And then because you can do these superimposed bursts of like, you basically shock the muscles, and you that way you activate every muscle group, and you see, are they stronger that way? What's the difference between how strong they are when you shock them versus how strong they are voluntarily? And but regardless, what you're talking about, this governor, that central governor theory was postulated with running. And you think about it when you're running and you're like, oh my God, I'm done. I can't run anymore. And then like it's your brain, it's uncomfortable. It's your brain shutting you down. And really, if all of a sudden you're like, I can't run anymore, and someone was like, oh my God, there's a tiger behind you, you
take off. I know.
Take out a sprint. And that's what I think about that's another reason why, you remember when he talked about earlier how these women are training their glutes very frequently, like they're doing band work. And you know, when you're doing band work and stuff like that, you're like, oh, I can't do any more reps. But it's just because it's uncomfortable. You really could get an extra 5 if you had to.
Yes.
So you're not really going to complete failure, and it's a good thing. It's you're not pushing it too hard.
Yeah, perceived exertion, they call it in a lot of labs, right? Perceived exertion. I want to take one last commercial break and bring you back. And I want to ask you a question about hip thrust being a better alternative for women who don't want their thighs to get bigger, but just their glutes to get bigger. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. Redcon One is one of the fastest growing supplement companies in the world today. That's because they produce supplements that deliver on their promises. From their flagship pre-workout Total War to their innovative whole food MREs and bars. Now you can get the deepest discount ever offered to any audience anywhere. Use code SHR and get 25% off all Redcon One products today. SHR and 25% off. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON1.com. Ever wish there was a precise way to gauge your recovery from workout to workout? Or wonder if the money you're spending on your nootropic supplements are actually improving brain function? Maybe you're aging and you're noticing some changes in memory. Wouldn't being able to really test your brain be of great value? Well, now you can with great accuracy with the Brain Gauge. The Brain Gauge lets you test essential components of brain health and track your brain health history, and all in the comfort of your own home. Go to gaugeyourbrain.com and use code SHR for $150 off this amazing device. That's gaugeyourbrain.com and SHR for $150 off. Crank your muscle gains to new heights by transforming every gram of protein you eat into 3 grams with Masszymes. With 100,000 HUTs of protease per capsule, Masszymes increases your absorption of key amino acids, resulting in stronger, healthier digestion of proteins and certain vitamins that not only multiplies the impact of the protein you eat, but can also repair a damaged intestinal wall. Go to Masszymes/SHR for 10% off. That's MASSZYMES.com/SHR.
7,451. That's how many people kick the bucket, buy the farm, or cash in their chips every day in the United States. Yep, that means 5 people are going to meet their maker during this commercial. And no, our commercials are not the cause. Half of those who punch the clock for the final time will do so without life insurance. Call Big Lou at Term Provider before you are number 7452. If you're a 50-year-old male, a tad porky with a touch of diabetes, $1 million of term life insurance may only cost about $200 a month. With more verified 5-star reviews than any other Lou on the radio, Big Lou has saved thousands of people thousands on their term insurance premiums. Stop procrastinating and call Big Lou today at 800-560-0301. 800-560-0301. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He doesn't want to be number 7,452. Call 800-560-0301 or biglou.com.
Are you still on the fence about body protection complex BPC Oral from drseeds.com? Listen to Maggie Kuhn, one of the owners of the C-Bus Lifting Company gym in Columbus, Ohio.
I had been having some nagging tendon issues that weren't injuries, just things that were annoying. You know, I'm 58 years old, so just older tendon kind of issues. For us powerlifters, you know, we really don't stop training when we have just nagging issues. We just kind of keep pushing through. And I started the BPC. What I noticed was I was doing some heavy tricep stuff that would have killed me before when I had an elbow problem, and I was able to do those with literally no pain at all.
Go to drseeds.com, drseeds.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your bottle of BPC Body Protection Complex today.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. So women are interesting creatures, aren't they? Right. Yeah. Guys love big, thick thighs, right? We're like, oh, yeah, you know, I can't get my pants on. I got to buy 38 waist because the legs don't fit.
Yeah.
Women don't want big thighs. They just don't. And even if you say to them, but no, your thighs look beautiful. They're round and they're muscular. They're like, no, I don't want big thighs. And so is the hip thrust a better alternative for women than, say, the squat or even the deadlift, because they're not going to really build or are you going to build those quads and hamstrings indirectly because they are stabilizing the movement?
So that's a very good question. And trust me, it's like half my clients here, that's what they just don't want bigger legs. They want bigger glutes. In fact, one of my most popular blog posts back in the day was how to grow your glutes without growing the legs. You know, it's and so is the hip thrust better for that? Yes, I do believe so. But here's the thing. You actually do get high, as you mentioned, high quad and hamstring activity with the hip thrust. And it's like the hip thrust is actually like a good total lower body movement because you get the adductors are hip extensors, you know, and it does work the hamstrings and quads. The quads, and the heavier you go, the quads have to activate more because it's actually a very complicated biomechanical concept. But basically, once your glutes kind of are over, like the knee is bent, so that takes the hamstrings out of it a lot. You start going heavier and heavier, you start feeling the hamstrings more because the glutes can't do the whole job. So your brain tries to activate the hamstrings more, but the hamstrings create hip extension and knee flexion at the same time. But in the hip thrust, you extend the knee just slightly as you come up. So you activate the quads more to prevent knee flexion from happening. So as you go heavier and heavier, you have to work more hamstrings and then therefore more quads. Same thing with squats. You don't want to use the hamstrings much in a squat because if you do, the quad has to do more because the hamstrings create knee flexion, and in a squat, you're getting knee extension. So I do think there was probably even better movements like the barbell glute bridge, but it's not as much range of motion. You don't tend to feel your quads quite as much with when your feet are when your feet are on the floor or your feet are elevated, but it's just not as convenient of an exercise. But
is that because once you're up, right, there's a compensatory relationship between the hips to the upper body and the hips to the lower body. So your quads have to work more because your core is on the other side. They have to stay kind of in balance with each other in order to get the proper hinging movement. Is that why?
No, I think it's like when you're against a bench, you're pushing back more and stuff, and especially you get strong, you figure out ways to cheat, and we're pushing back and you know.
Right.
With the
Right.
glute bridge, if you push back too much, you start sliding.
Sliding.
Yeah. So, but I mean, regardless, you don't get as much range of motion. So you have high activation, but not a lot of range of motion.
Mhm.
It's more quasi isometric. So I don't think you'd get as much growth with the quads and hamstrings as you would with squats and deadlifts, like squats for the quads and deadlifts with the hamstrings. But regardless, it is a better movement for that. But I think you'd have to stay high reps, put a band around the knees, and you get even more glute activation that way, in my opinion.
So anything coming up? Are you attending any seminars, any lectures, anything in the future?
Not really. I'm actually this book took so much out of me. I'm trying to lay low for a year and recover. The book really took a lot out of me.
Good. And so every day, do you have people who come to the Glute Lab and work with you?
Yeah, it's I've trained tons of people out of here, and it's been nice.
Well, right now you're shut down, right, because of COVID-19.
Right now, shut down. Yeah, but like normally, I train people every day.
Yeah, that's exciting. Very, very exciting. Are you working with any celebrities that you can mention?
I don't train celebrities. I think about moving to LA, but I actually don't want to because I don't want to become like a competitive about that. Like I'd move to LA and I'd be telling everyone like, hey, tell The Rock to come train with me. I want to train.
Yeah, right.
Train this person. Then I'd be obsessed with that. And then the celebrities are also very busy. They need to you might have a schedule, but then you wake up to a couple texts from your celebrity clients saying, hey, I got to move my 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock. And now you're trying to reshuffle the whole rest of your day. Seems like it'd be very, very stressful life.
Hectic.
And if you don't reshuffle it, they'll find someone who will. So
right. No, that's interesting
for me. Yeah.
Do you get back to Arizona at all once in a while?
Yeah, I actually went during Christmas time. And I thought it was funny because I actually rented a room at the Princess, like Scottsdale Princess, and rented I drive a crummy car, but I rented like a Dodge Challenger, and I was I'm going to be driving all around. I'm going to have people visit me. I'm staying at this nice suite. And you know how it is when you visit your hometown. Every person I call, they're like, yeah, I got to see you. And then I'd call them, hey, when do you want? And they're all busy. And I'm like, God, you're never a prophet in your own land,
Have you ever eaten at Banderas in Scottsdale?
Oh, yeah. That place, the steaks are amazing.
But they make the best cornbread. They put creamed corn in their cornbread.
Yeah.
And it's like I'll go there and I'll eat 2 plates of that cornbread, then hate myself for the next 2 days after it. But
I know the feeling.
Yeah, it's great. Listen, it's really great having you back on the show. You're welcome to come on anytime you want to promote a book or anything like that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And so stay in touch. And there you go. Get the book at Amazon. I looked at the book. It's not a book that you read per se. It's really more of a handbook.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so I want to do this. What's the best way to do it? And it's more like an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
For strength and conditioning than anything else. It's not something you just read from cover to cover. It's not that kind of book.
I wanted to make a book where you'd be proud to leave it on your coffee table.
Yeah, it is, and it is good looking, and it's substantial. It's a big book. I mean, it
weighs 6 pounds.
Does it really? No, there you go. You could do 2 of them and do hip thrusts with them. Get 2 of them and do hip thrusts with them. All right, good seeing you, Bret. Thanks for being here, brother.
Thank you, Carl.
Take care. And we're going to take one quick commercial break. And when we come back, I'm going to share some information about past pandemics with you. And I want to talk about, I'm trying to apply some real critical thinking to what's going on in our lives today. The last couple of days, I've done this, and I think I've hit some home runs. I've gotten a lot of messages from people saying that it makes a lot of sense about how this virus both seeded and spread into our population. Why some cities are having a worse time than others, but today I want to talk about age stratification and past pandemics, because we're talking about how the elderly and the predominantly unhealthy population are the ones at greatest risk, but that's nothing new. That's the way it is with the flu as well. Stay tuned.
Quest Nutrition makes bars, cookies, chips, and pizzas out of complete dairy-based proteins. Our products minimize net carbs and sugar without sacrificing taste. Each delicious chocolate-flavored chip, cookie chunk, and crunchy crumble is custom-made to maintain Quest macros. It's time to enjoy foods that work for you, not against you. It's time to enjoy your Quest.
How often do you sit with your laptop right on your lap? How much time do you spend on your cell phone? Are you in a technology-packed office Monday through Friday? Are you worried about this type of radiation? Now there's something you can do about it. GetLambs.com. This radiation has been linked to infertility in men, glandular tumors, gut microbiome dysbioses, and impaired sleep quality. Now you can provide 360-degree protection to at-risk parts of your body with radiation-proof apparel from GetLambs.com. Comfortable, breathable, and 99% effective. Go to GetLambs.com and use coupon code SHR for 20% off your order of $100 or more. That's GetLambs.com, GetLambs.com, and code SHR.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at Synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
You've heard me talk about the chill pill on the show and how effective it is at helping people who suffer from social anxiety, or sometimes when you just want to take the edge off to a long, stressful day. Well, listen to this story from Dylan Goutreau.
Definitely takes anxiety away, which I have a long history of having. Started out at 2 milligrams a day of Xanax. That was at 8 years old. And so I stopped using benzos 3 years ago. Extremely difficult. Yeah, so I spent about 3 years trying to find anything and everything I could that would be healthy for me to help with anxiety. Because I'm talking, full out panic attack. The chill pill was the first thing that I found that actually in the middle of a panic attack I can take, and it definitely subsides.
Go to drseeds.com. That's DRSEEDS.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your first bottle of the chill pill. Check it out. I promise this is one supplement that delivers. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor? Strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. Ever wish there was a precise way to gauge your recovery from workout to workout? Or wonder if the money you're spending on your nootropic supplements are actually improving brain function? Maybe you're aging and you're noticing some changes in memory. Wouldn't being able to really test your brain be of great value? Well, now you can with great accuracy with the Brain Gauge. The Brain Gauge lets you test essential components of brain health and track your brain health history, and all in the comfort of your own home. Go to gaugeyourbrain.com and use code SHR for $150 off this amazing device. That's gaugeyourbrain.com and SHR for $150 off.
This is the Superhuman Channel, doing reps with the weight of the world.
Welcome back. So, a couple days ago, I talked about the seeding and spreading of this virus. Basically, in short terms, places that have large international travel hubs and a large dependency on mass transit are the places that this virus exploded. And really, we didn't have to shut down the whole country. We just need to shut down those places because it was people who traveled from those epicenters outward that brought it home to their little towns. And this is indisputable. In fact, tomorrow, last half of tomorrow's show, I've got a brilliant statistician and actuarial coming on the show. He's a friend of mine. And I said, Mark, would you look at these numbers and see if there's anything to this? I think I've discovered why some places are having a worse time than others. And he told me, he said, it looks good, this theory of mine. Okay. And then yesterday, I did a little thing about the real heroes of this pandemic, and that's the people who've lost their jobs. And because it's a well-known and well-studied fact, science proves what I'm about to say, dating back to 2002 and beyond, that as unemployment goes up, death rates go up, and especially suicides. And we're already seeing suicides go up in this short period of time. And there's a number out there that's used by everybody who talks about the relationship between unemployment and death, that for every 1% rise in unemployment, it represents 40,000 deaths. I think that's a very underestimated number for a variety of reasons that I gave yesterday in detail. However, since this number is accepted by everybody, it's even used in Hollywood movies like The Big Short. Brad Pitt says it to the guys in the casino when they're all raving about making a bunch of money. He says, hey, man, calm down. This represents a lot of people losing their jobs. For every 1%, the unemployment rate goes up. That's 40,000 deaths. And I used that yesterday, subtracted the previous unemployment rate before the pandemic against the expected unemployment rate, which is predicted to be between 15 and 21%. And we came up with 480,000 deaths. And a lot of people go, oh, Carl, how could that? No, we know that as the unemployment rate goes up, these deaths happen. And so if the science is science, which it is, then we can expect close to 500,000 deaths as the months play out from people who've lost their jobs. And so I've been thinking a lot about past pandemics. So H1N1 killed predominantly young people, children, but it was transmitted to elderly people and old adults and so on. I think I even got it, to be honest with you. We talked about it on the show back in 2009. I was sick for about 3 days. I was down. And when I came back, I had lost my voice. I sounded like Barry White. I joked and said Barry White's doing the show this week. When you look at the way we treated that pandemic, we did close some schools. We did. Not forever, but for a while. The first wave, so to speak. But because it was kids, we were like, oh, we just have to close the schools and it'll be fine. The adults will be okay. And we still lost a lot of adults to that pandemic. A lot of people died. I think there's some estimations that I want to say I recall somewhere around 90,000 to 100,000 people in the United States died because of H1N1. Big number, very big number. But we didn't shut down the country. We just shut the schools. Again, going back to my theory, if the pandemic it occurs in the epicenters that are driven by international travel hubs and mass transit, then we should have just shut those places down the way we shut the schools down to protect the kids. But elderly people and people with comorbidities, and those are type 2 diabetes and everything that's related to it, obesity, autoimmune disorders, they die at a much higher rate from just the seasonal flu. The flu is stratified by age. People in their 30s and 40s, they don't die from it as much. Very young children, they die from it. But, 10-year-old, 12-year-old kids, they don't die from it. The people who die from the seasonal flu are the elderly people, and they're the ones who run and get a vaccine at Walgreens every year because they don't want to get the flu. But they also do other things. When they know it's flu season, they're much more cautious about being around large numbers of people. They wash their hands more. If you ask elderly people, well, what do you do during the seasonal flu? They don't say, oh, we don't care. We just go, oh, well, we're cautious. And if somebody doesn't feel good, we tell them not to come over to the house. All of these things could have been done with this pandemic, we're finding out. The death rate of this pandemic is slowly being shown to be in the percents of 1%, not the 5%, 2% that people were predicting. And the absurd numbers that first came out, when we first heard about it, which, 10% of don't forget, they said 1 million people were going to die in the United States from this virus. Let's not forget that. I guess my point here is this. We've handled past pandemics that threatened to kill our children with much more decorum and sensibility than we're handling this pandemic that threatens to kill old people and people who already are sick. And those people are the ones that die from the seasonal flu. If you look at, I'm going to attach the studies to today's discussion so you can go and look at them. But if you look at the research behind this, older people, except for H1N1, that was a unique one. H1N1 killed kids, and we closed the schools. We didn't shut down the country. We didn't say, Mom and Dad, you can't go to work because you may be bringing it home to your kids. We didn't say that. Now, are children's lives worth less than the elderly and the already ill? That's a rhetorical question, because you and I both know that's not the case. If anything, they're worth more. From an evolutionary perspective, those of us, once we have children, we don't really need to be around. Once we've raised them and they're on their own, we could check out. Our goal as a species is to have children and launch them and then, live out our lives. So children are worth more, if you want to look at the value of a human life, than an old person, and certainly more than a sick person, sadly to say. But it's the truth, and don't be offended because it's the truth. But the reality is that we didn't shut down businesses because we didn't want the people who worked in businesses to bring the H1N1 virus home and kill their kids. We didn't do that. But today, we've shut down the whole country, and we're destroying the economy, which I predict, and you heard it here first. I know I don't have the audience of a Dr. Oz or anybody else, but just remember that I said this. Months from now, maybe even next year, we're going to talk about the deaths as a result of the massive unemployment. And I predict that those numbers are going to be way, 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 way more dead from the way we handled this virus than the virus itself. I predict. So you heard it here. When you hear it again a year from now, you go, man, that guy Carl said that. I can't believe that. He's not such a schmuck after all. Yes, Scott Lawler is pointing out that the 1 million number was if we take no precautions at all. I do agree that death rate will be lower than the original proposed number, and that's true because but it's not because of Kentucky, it's not because of North and South Dakota, it's because of New York and California and Washington. It's because of the epicenters. Don't take this as my saying we should stay shut down. The idea of shutdown is to buy time. But here's the problem with that, Scott. So the reason we're shut down, let's go back, since you're coming up with this, and this is a valid point. I wasn't going to get into this, but I want to now. So let's go back to the reason that we shut down. So the fear was that the spike of this virus would be so high and so fast that, let's say that this is the spike. Imagine I'm drawing a line. And this right here, this line is the capacity of hospitals to handle those cases. The reason we talked about flattening the curve is because, A, this virus has to run its course. It will either run its course in the course of a couple months, or it's run its course in the course of a year. But it has to run its course. Virologists will all agree with this. They'll all say, yeah, no, this isn't going to go away until it runs its course, because every time you get it and I get it, it mutates and it changes to something else, and we contribute to its reduction in risk by it passing through the population. This is a fact. That's what herd immunity is. But remember, the reason that we wanted to flatten the curve is because the hospitals can only handle this much with ventilators and hospital beds and all that sort of stuff. It wasn't because we thought we could stop the virus from running its course. But now the excessive down pressure to flatten the curve more than what was originally suggested is just going to take this virus and make it take longer to run its course. Instead of it running its course, let's say in a couple, 3 months, it could be running its course through the rest of the year. So it's misguided. The way non-scientific politicians have taken this idea of flattening the curve to avoid an over what's the word an unnecessary demand of unavailable hospital beds and stuff has turned into like a pissing competition now. Well, we're going to keep people locked up till June. Oh, we're going to do it till July. They're not going to. We're still going to have the same death rate predicted, believe it or not. Virologists will tell you this because it has to run its course in order for it to go away. But that's not even the real issue here. The real issue here is that we did not have to shut the entire country down. We did not, and I will not. I'll debate that with anybody. If we would have looked at New York, because they're epicenters of, and New York specifically, because it's an epicenter of worldwide travel, and they have a massive demand and dependency on mass transit. And we would have said to New Yorkers, you can't leave New York. Got to stay in New York. And probably Jersey too, because Jersey and New York, they're like almost like the same state now. People who work in Manhattan, they live in Jersey, and Connecticut is kind of like that. If we would have just taken those states there, and then, of course, Washington State and Los Angeles, and maybe one or two other places that appeared to have both contributing effects of international travel, high abundance of international travel, real travel hub there, and mass transit dependency, and we would have shut those places down. Places like North and South Dakota, Kentucky, we could have gone on our way. We would have had some cases because of people that continue to travel. I know people, I said this the other day, I know a guy who got it because his daughter and grandchildren didn't want to stay in New York. They were afraid. They didn't get it. They carried it to him, and him and his wife got it. So I just think that we need to reflect on what we've done in past pandemics and ask ourselves, why are we doing this now? And really, I'm happy to say that our governor here in Kentucky, maybe he's listening to people, is talking about loosening up things in May and possibly everything back to normal mid-June. And I think that's sensible. I'm not like, oh no, you got to do it faster. No, we don't want to do that. But I just think that you mark my words. We're going to look back at this and notice two things years from now. Number one, the deaths from unemployment topped what we predicted the deaths would be from COVID-19. And there's going to be a lot of brilliant people who are going to say, we really didn't handle this right. If we would have just shut down New York and New Jersey and Connecticut and California and said, hey, you people have to stay home in your state, social distance there. And we could have social distance here too. That's not a bad thing. But I mean, if they would have just taken the actions that we took for the whole country with just those epicenters, I predict that this would have turned out a lot different. And I don't think we would have. And we're seeing this in other countries. We're seeing it in Sweden and places like that. We're seeing this. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. But ultimately, I want people to stay safe and healthy. And I also want people who are at risk to think about changing their lives. Because you have an opportunity to get stronger and use this as a springboard for a reason. Start paying attention to your health, paying attention to exercising and moving more, eating less crap food. A couple of these pork companies that are going by the wayside, they make processed meats that have been tied to all sorts of things. I'm not too sad if they go away. Got to be honest with you. Smithfield Farm, places like that. I mean, they're not. You can buy good pork from a farmer. You can buy good pork in a grocery store. But that processed stuff, between the high heat cooking that they use, the things that they add to it, the rates of sodium in them. I mean, I may piss people off, but I don't think I'll miss them if they went away. That's just my 2 cc's. And I hope you enjoyed today's show. We have great shows for the next 2 weeks. Elisa is knocking it out of the park. I got to be honest with you. Some of the shows that we're going to be doing. In fact, we're going to start creating a schedule so you can see what shows are coming up in the entire week at a time, because she's that good. She's that efficient. She's got us booked for the next 3 weeks already. I'll be doing 5 shows a week For the next 3 weeks, absolutely. So be prepared. All right, look, thank you for being here. Scott Lawler, thank you for always putting good comments up there and challenging me. I like that sort of stuff. I don't know it all. In fact, I don't know much of anything, to be honest with you. But thank you for being here, and we'll see everybody tomorrow with more Superhuman Radio. Please share the show, and we'll see you then.